Go ahead, please.
Do you support the House's FISA bill that was passed this morning?
Which one?
The FISA bill. And did you talk to any?
Well, I'm not a big fan of FISA. I looked at it and I studied it, and I know it probably better than anybody. You know, they spied on my campaign. You do know that, right? And they did lots of other bad things. I'm not a big fan of FISA, but I told everybody, I said, do what you want. They put a lot of checks and balances on, and I guess it's down to 2 years now, so that it would come due in the early part of my administration on the basis that we live up to the polls, because all the polls, we just had another one come out, we're leading by a lot, but it comes out quickly. I said, you do what you want, but I'm not a big fan of FISA. I think it's terrible. Yeah.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about the Uniparty once again coming together to screw over the American people, okay? I mean, Democrats and Republicans only can seem to agree when it comes to a few issues in Congress, right? I tell you, for the most part, it is Democrats saying, hey, we should do something. Republicans saying, we think this is a bad idea. And then eventually Republicans basically agree to get on board with the Democrats and their agenda, right? But when you see the Uniparty come together very quickly on something, okay, there's not much arguing. They are all kind of agreeing that this is something that we need to do. You should be extremely skeptical, because rest assured, you're probably going to be getting screwed over, right? There's probably some funny business going on as a result of the Uniparty deciding to work together. And that's what we have to talk about here today, as the House has approved a bill to renew the FISA spy program, which is basically a program designed to spy on foreign targets in foreign countries. However, there's a backdoor mechanism that allows the program to spy on American citizens without a warrant, okay, which would be unconstitutional, if they are connected to the foreign terrorist threat. And the Uniparty voted for it after a tie-breaking vote from House Speaker Mike Johnson that has solicited a whole lot of backlash. So I want to go ahead and talk about it, but first I want to play this news clip so that you guys get a better understanding of what's going on here. So let's get into it.
Passed legislation to reauthorize what's known as the FISA surveillance program. It allows for the U.S. to track the movements of foreigners located outside of the U.S. without a warrant. CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian is on Capitol Hill. So, Nicole, why are lawmakers holding a vote on this bill today, even though it was blocked in the House just 2 days ago?
Well, if you go back to that calendar that you just showed, they really don't have any choice. I mean, they have a week to reauthorize this. Otherwise, the program could expire, which national security experts have warned would be very detrimental to the government's ability to conduct warrantless surveillance. So this is something that has to get done. And so that's why you are seeing the House make yet another attempt. Now, they did kind of rework the legislation, tweak the rules a little bit to try to get around those 19 House Republicans who blocked the legislation, and they did that in part by shortening the time period by which the FISA program would be reauthorized down to 2 years instead of 5. The Speaker also noting that this includes a number of critical reforms, and really a lot of the debate over this has been over the scope of the government's surveillance powers and the Balancing Act when it comes to people's personal liberties. While this Section 702 targets foreigners overseas, there are times when Americans' data could be at risk. And so that is really the concern that some lawmakers have had within the course of the debate.
Nicole, let's also talk about Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's threats to oust House Speaker Johnson. To what extent will the Speaker's forthcoming appearance with former President Trump influence how this issue actually plays out?
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, Speaker Johnson told us that, he's not going to comment on the conversations he intends to have with the former president today when we asked whether or not he would raise this issue of the motion to vacate, because, of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a critical ally of the former president as well. But he continues to defend his actions and also continues to call Marjorie Taylor Greene a friend. He has even gone so far as to offer her a kitchen cabinet type advisory role so that she kind of has a voice and direct line into the Speaker, something that Greene says she is still kind of taking a look at and considering. But really the thrust of this appearance today with the former president is around issues of election integrity, with the Speaker potentially expected to roll out some new legislation that would prohibit non-citizens from being able to vote, although there are already laws on the books to deal with that. But take a listen to what he told us on that front earlier today.
Congress has a role with regard to federal elections. We want to make absolutely certain that anybody votes is actually an American citizen. And in some states, it's too easy. You just check a box and you can vote. So we need to make sure that federal law is clear on that matter and make sure that we actually have election integrity, because it's the biggest concern of the American people right now.
So again, for the most part, non-citizens are already barred from voting in our elections. But that being said, it will be an interesting appearance today on the part of the speaker, who was very critical in helping the former president challenge the 2020 election, which the former president still contends was stolen.
All right, Nicole Killian.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Okay, speaking of former President Trump, he was one person who says that he was affected by the FISA program. Okay, he says that that's the program that was used to spy on his campaign back in 2016. So he's against it, right? He's not a fan of it, and that caused a big uproar in the House. A lot of Republicans were against it, but eventually they agreed on it. Okay, at least for now. They're going to try to vote on an amendment coming up here soon to require a warrant before spying on American citizens. However, you do have some Democrats, like, for example, Dan Goldman, that are actively advocating for the federal government to be able to subvert the Constitution. Take a look.
To the gentleman from New York, Dan Goldman.
Thank you very much, Ranking Member. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of this bill that includes an absolutely essential national security program. But I will support this bill only if the amendment that would impose a warrant requirement on queries regarding American citizens fails. First, a warrant is simply not needed because the query in question is not a new search. It simply identifies any contacts or communications with Americans from within the universe of information that was already lawfully obtained from the original search. And that original search can only be of foreign nationals on foreign soil. I spent 10 years as a federal prosecutor and obtained hundreds of search warrants. And based on that experience, I can say with confidence that requiring a warrant would render this program unusable and entirely worthless. Based on the information available to law enforcement, it would be impossible to get probable cause to obtain a search warrant from a judge in a timely manner. And even if it were possible, the time required to obtain a search warrant from a judge would frequently fail to meet the urgency of a terrorist or other national security threat. A warrant requirement is unnecessary and unworkable, and I therefore urge my colleagues to oppose the Biggs Amendment. I yield back.
Chairman yields.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Okay, I personally think that we should not compromise on the Constitution. Okay, we should not compromise on illegal searches and seizures of the American people. That's how I feel about it, right? I really do feel like there's really no other debate to be had. If we're compromising on that part of the Constitution and our rights, our individual liberties, and our freedoms, then what else are people willing to compromise on? I mean, we've basically already compromised on the First Amendment. Okay, they're trying to make us compromise on the Second Amendment. Now they're trying to make us compromise on this. At some point, the American people have to say enough is enough. We cannot continue to compromise on our God-given rights. Okay, we as the American people should not be subject to illegal searches and seizures, right? I mean, the authorities, the government should have to go through the proper judicial process in order to spy on American citizens, right? I mean, listen, at the end of the day, I'm not saying that, it's perfect. I'm not saying it's even the most efficient thing, okay? But the reason why it's in the Constitution is to protect the American people from a tyrannical government that seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger in regards to overreach and power. Okay, and at some point we have to stand up and say, no, enough is enough. We cannot continue to just allow the government to violate our rights, okay? And that basically is the end of it, okay? I think that when Trump is elected president, he will have the ability to decide whether or not he wants to continue to run the program. And I think that is actually what got a lot of MAGA Republicans in Congress on board with it. This idea that, okay, well, if Trump is elected, then, hey, we can essentially get rid of it. And I hope that that's what Trump does. Trump actively came out and campaigned against it, saying that he's not a fan of it. And I hope that if he's elected, that he moves to get rid of it, because he says personally he knows what it's like to have his rights violated by the government and then used against him, right, in his own presidential campaign. So, hey, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.